Nothing says forever like a $6,000 ring and 80 people waiting to see you fail. The engagement party was Elena's idea, naturally. She wanted the whole town to witness our perfect love story. Her words, not mine. I should have known something was wrong when she insisted on inviting people we barely talked to anymore. "David, you look miserable," my sister-in-law Janet whispered, sliding up beside me with her third glass of champagne. "This is supposed to be your celebration." I forced a smile and adjusted my tie. The community center felt stuffy, decorated with white balloons and roses that probably cost more than most people's rent. Elena floated through the crowd in her designer dress, accepting congratulations like she was running for office, which, knowing Elena, she probably was in her head. "Just taking it all in," I told Janet, watching my fiancé laugh at something Trent Morrison said. Trent owned the luxury car dealership downtown and had recently become one of Elena's clients. He also had the kind of smile that made you want to check your wallet afterward. The scrap metal business I'd built from nothing didn't exactly scream high society, but it paid the bills and then some. Elena used to appreciate that, used to appreciate a lot of things about me, actually. These days, she seemed more interested in impressing people who wouldn't spit on me if I was on fire. "Elena's really glowing tonight," Janet continued, though something in her tone suggested she wasn't entirely complimentary. "That dress must have cost a fortune." "Everything costs a fortune these days," I muttered, taking a long sip of my drink. The whiskey burned, but not as much as watching Elena hang on every word that came out of Trent's mouth. My daughter Maya bounced over, her college freshman energy radiating like heat from a furnace. "Dad, Mom wants everyone to gather around for the toast. She's got something special planned." Of course she did. Elena always had something special planned. Usually involved making me look like the lucky guy who somehow convinced a goddess to settle for a mere mortal. The crowd formed a loose circle around us. Elena's parents beamed from the front row. They'd never quite forgiven me for not being a lawyer or doctor, but the engagement ring had apparently bought me some temporary goodwill. Elena's best friend Jessica stood nearby, holding her phone up to record everything, because nothing happened in Elena's world unless it was documented for social media. "Thank you all for coming," Elena began, her voice carrying that practiced courtroom confidence. "David and I are so grateful to have you here to celebrate this milestone with us." She paused, looking directly at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. The champagne had brought a flush to her cheeks, and her eyes seemed brighter than usual. Too bright, maybe. "You know, everyone always asks how you know when you found the one," she continued, gesturing with her glass. "And I used to think it was about compatibility, or shared goals, or building a life together." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I felt my jaw tighten slightly. Something about her tone was setting off alarm bells in my head. But tonight, looking at this beautiful ring, surrounded by all these wonderful people, I realized the truth. Elena's voice grew louder, more confident. "I only said yes because the ring was beautiful. I never actually wanted to marry you, David." The room went silent. Not the good kind of silent you get during a touching moment. The kind of silent you get right before a car crash, when everyone realizes what's about to happen but nobody can stop it. Elena blinked, as if suddenly realizing what she'd just said. Her hand flew to her mouth, but the words were already out there, hanging in the air like smoke from a house fire. I didn't mean..." She started, but I was already moving. I walked calmly to where she stood, took her left hand gently in mine, and slid the engagement ring off her finger. The diamond caught the light from the overhead fixtures, throwing tiny rainbows across the wall. "Well then," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I guess we won't be needing this anymore." I pocketed the ring and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the silence erupted into chaos. Gasps, whispered conversations, someone's nervous laughter. I didn't turn around to see Elena's face. I didn't need to. I could imagine it perfectly. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold. 23 years of marriage, 2 years of engagement planning, and it all came down to a drunken confession at a party neither of us really wanted. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I sat in my truck for a long time, watching people stream out of the community center. Some looked embarrassed, others excited, nothing like a public relationship meltdown to give the gossip something to chew on for months. Elena emerged eventually, supported by Jessica, and looking like she wanted to disappear into the pavement. She spotted my truck and started walking over, but I was already pulling out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I saw her standing under the streetlight, still in that expensive dress, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. The house felt different when I got home. Same furniture, same pictures on the walls, same creaky floorboard by the kitchen sink. But something fundamental had shifted. Maybe it was me. I poured another whiskey and sat at the kitchen table, turning the engagement ring over in my fingers. $6,000 for a piece of jewelry she only wanted because it was pretty, not because it represented our future, or our love, or any of the things I thought it meant when I bought it. My phone buzzed with text messages. Elena, probably, trying to explain or apologize or pretend it never happened. I turned it off without reading them. Tomorrow would bring consequences, explanations, and all the messy business of untangling a life we'd built together. Tonight, I just wanted to sit in the quiet and figure out who I was going to be now. The whiskey was smooth, the house was silent, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could think clearly. Elena had given me something valuable tonight, even if she didn't realize it. She'd given me the truth, and the truth, as they say, will set you free. I just hadn't expected freedom to taste quite so bitter. The next morning arrived with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Elena's car was gone from the driveway. Probably spent the night at Jessica's, licking her wounds and planning damage control. I'd slept surprisingly well for a man whose engagement had imploded in front of half the town. Coffee in hand, I started making phone calls. First to the bank, where I discovered that being unmarried had certain advantages when it came to joint accounts. Amazing how quickly you can freeze assets when you're the primary account holder and your fiancée just publicly announced she never wanted to marry you. I'd like to make some changes to my accounts, I told the customer service representative, a pleasant woman named Carol who probably dealt with relationship disasters every day. Of course, Mr. Patterson. What kind of changes are we looking at? The kind where only my name is on everything. Carol didn't ask questions. Bless her professional heart. Next came the house. Elena had moved in 3 years ago, but the deed was still solely in my name, something she'd nagged me about changing, but I'd kept putting off. Procrastination, it turned out, had its benefits. I called a locksmith. "How soon can you get here?" I asked. "Couple hours, if it's urgent." "It's urgent." While I waited, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I started digging through Elena's digital life. Her laptop was still on the kitchen counter, password protected, but not particularly well. Elena had always been predictable with passwords, birthdays, anniversaries, pet names. It took me 3 tries to get in. Maya 2004. Our daughter's name and birth year. Classy. What I found in her email and text messages made my morning coffee taste like ash. Months of correspondence with Trent Morrison, starting professional and gradually becoming less so. Hotel reservations, dinner plans when she told me she was working late, photos I definitely wasn't supposed to see, the Lakeside Motor Inn. The same place I'd taken Elena when we were teenagers, back when it was just a cheap motel for kids who couldn't afford anything better. Now it was apparently where she went to remember what excitement felt like. I printed everything. Call it evidence, call it insurance, call it the kind of documentation that comes in handy when your world falls apart in public. The printer churned out page after page of betrayal, each sheet another nail in the coffin of whatever we'd once had. The locksmith arrived around noon, a gruff guy named Pete who didn't ask why I was changing the locks on my own house. He just did the work and handed me the new keys. "You want me to leave the old lock somewhere in case—" he started. "No," I said firmly. "I don't." Elena's parents called around 2. Her mother, Patricia, had that tone people use when they're trying very hard to be reasonable while actually being furious. "David, honey, Elena is beside herself. She says she can't get into the house." "That's correct." "Well, surely you can work this out like adults. She made a mistake, but—" "Patricia, did you hear what she said last night? In front of everyone?" A pause. "She'd been drinking. People say things they don't mean when they've been drinking. Sometimes they say things they do mean, but are usually smart enough to keep to themselves." Another pause, longer this time. "Where is she supposed to get her things?" "I'll have them packed and ready by tomorrow. She can pick them up when I'm not here." "David, you're being unreasonable." "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm being remarkably reasonable. I could have made a much bigger scene last night." I hung up before she could respond. Family loyalty was a beautiful thing, but it had its limits. Maya called an hour later, her voice tight with the kind of anger only a 20-year-old can muster. "Dad, what the hell? Mom's crying, Grandma's furious, and everyone's talking about last night like it was some kind of soap opera." "Your mother said what she said, Maya. I didn't force those words out of her mouth." "She was drunk. People make mistakes." 23 years of mistakes, apparently. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "Let me tell you what's not fair. Fair isn't finding out your fiancé has been having an affair. Fair isn't discovering that the woman you thought you'd spend the rest of your life with only said yes to your proposal because she liked the jewelry. Fair isn't being humiliated in front of your friends and family because someone couldn't keep their mouth shut after a few drinks. Maya was quiet for a moment. You went through her stuff, didn't you? Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. I went through the laptop she left in my kitchen, yes. That's a violation of privacy. So is adultery, but here we are. She hung up on me. I wasn't surprised. Maya had always been closer to Elena, always seen her mother as the successful one, the ambitious one, the one worth admiring. I was just the guy who paid for college and fixed things when they broke. Evening brought Elena herself, standing on the front porch looking like she hadn't slept. She tried her key first, of course, then knocked when it didn't work. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. We need to talk, she said. I think you said everything that needed saying last night. David, please. I was drunk. I was nervous. I said something stupid. You know I didn't mean it. Do I? Because I've spent the day going through your emails, Elena. Your text messages. Your hotel receipts. Her face went pale. You had no right. I had every right. You left your laptop in my kitchen, in my house, the house you apparently won't be living in anymore. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. You have the right to find somewhere else to live, preferably with someone who appreciates beautiful rings and doesn't mind being second choice. I closed the door and turned the new lock. She pounded on it for a few minutes, shouting things I chose not to listen to. Eventually, she gave up and left. I spent the evening packing her belongings into boxes. Clothes, books, the expensive skincare products she ordered online, the framed photos of us that now seemed like evidence from someone else's life. It was methodical work, almost therapeutic. By midnight, Elena's presence had been reduced to a dozen cardboard boxes stacked in the garage. 23 years of shared life, condensed and ready for pickup. I poured a final whiskey and sat on the couch, looking around the living room. It felt bigger somehow, like removing Elena's things had given the space room to breathe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Lawyers, probably, and definitely more family drama. Maya would likely side with her mother, and Elena's parents would close ranks. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. My phone buzzed with another text from Elena. I glanced at it long enough to see the words mistake and talk and please, then deleted it without reading the rest. Some conversations were over before they started. 3 days passed before I drove to the Lakeside Motor Inn. I told myself it was just curiosity, but that was a lie. I wanted to see the place where my engagement had really ended, long before Elena's public confession made it official. The motel sat on the edge of town like a relic from a different era. It had been renovated since Elena and I were teenagers. New paint, updated signs, probably better cable TV, but it still had that slightly seedy charm that made it perfect for people who didn't want to be seen. I parked across the street and watched the comings and goings. Mostly traveling salesmen and the occasional couple looking for privacy. The kind of place where you paid cash and nobody asked questions. Trent's Mercedes was parked in front of room 12. I sat there for an hour, engine running, heat on, watching the door to that room like it might spontaneously combust. Around 2 in the afternoon, Elena emerged first, looking around carefully before walking to her car. Trent followed 5 minutes later, straightening his tie and checking his phone. They left separately, like they'd practiced the routine. I waited until both cars were out of sight, then walked across the street to the motel office. The desk clerk was a thin woman with tired eyes and the kind of smile that suggested she'd seen everything at least twice. Help you? I'm looking for information about one of your guests. Trent Morrison? Her smile faded slightly. We don't give out information about guests. I pulled out my wallet and placed a $50 bill on the counter. I'm not asking for his room number. I already know it's 12. I'm asking how long he's been renting it. She looked at the money, then at me, then at the money again. You're not a cop. No, I'm the guy whose fiancée has been meeting him here. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She palmed the 50 with practiced ease. 3 months, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, pays for the week, uses it twice. Same room every time. His request? Said he liked the view. I looked toward room 12. The view was of the parking lot and a dumpster. Thanks. For what it's worth, she called as I turned to leave. She never looked happy when she left. Small comfort, but I'd take it. That evening, I drove to Trent's dealership. Morrison Luxury Motors occupied a prime spot on Main Street, all glass and chrome and vehicles that cost more than most people's houses. Trent's personal Mercedes, a different one from the motel car, sat in the owner's spot near the front entrance. I parked in the shadows behind the service department and waited. Trent emerged around 7, checking his phone and walking with the kind of swagger that suggested he thought the world owed him something. He climbed into his Mercedes and drove off, probably heading home to his own unsuspecting spouse. I waited another hour to make sure he wasn't coming back, then got to work. The tire iron from my truck made short work of his front tires. Not slashed, that would be too obvious, too criminal. Just deflated, with the valve stems loosened enough that they'd stay flat but could theoretically be fixed, the kind of thing that could happen naturally if you were unlucky. I keyed a single word into the paint on his driver's side door. Liar. Then I drove home and printed out the most damaging of Elena's text messages, the ones where she complained about me, where she talked about how much more exciting Trent was, where she made plans for a future that didn't include her current life. I mailed copies to her parents. The next morning brought the first real consequences. Elena called, screaming, before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. You mailed my private messages to my parents? Are you insane? I mailed the truth to people who were calling me unreasonable. Seemed fair. Fair? You violated my privacy, you? Elena, you lost the right to privacy when you started conducting your affair on devices connected to accounts I pay for, in a house I own, while wearing an engagement ring I bought. You're being vindictive. I'm being honest. There's a difference. My mother is devastated. Your mother called me unreasonable for changing the locks on my own house. Now she knows why I changed them. Elena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable. David, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. Can we fix 3 months of Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at the Lakeside Motor Inn? Can we fix you telling a room full of people that you only said yes to my proposal because you liked the ring? Another pause. How did you know about the motel? I know lots of things now, Elena. That's what happens when someone starts paying attention. You followed me. I followed the evidence. You and Trent weren't exactly careful about covering your tracks. She hung up on me. I finished my coffee and got ready for work, feeling lighter than I had in months. Around noon, Jessica called. Elena's best friend had always been polite to me, but never warm. I was just the husband, not particularly interesting or important. Today, she sounded nervous. David, Elena is really struggling with all this. Maybe you could ease up a little? Ease up on what, exactly? The retaliation. The locks, the bank accounts, sending those messages to her parents. Jessica, did you know about the affair? A pause that told me everything I needed to know. I thought so, I continued. So when you talk about me easing up, what you're really saying is that I should make it easier for Elena to continue lying to everyone about why our engagement ended. She made a mistake. She made a choice. Multiple choices, actually, over the course of several months. I'm just making sure people understand what those choices were. You're trying to destroy her. I'm trying to protect myself. There's a difference. That afternoon, I drove past Trent's dealership. His Mercedes was still in the parking lot, surrounded by a small crowd of onlookers. Someone had called a tow truck to take it to a body shop. Trent himself stood nearby, gesticulating angrily at a police officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I kept driving, but I was smiling. Maya called that evening, her voice cold and distant. Grandma Patricia showed me the messages you sent. Good. Then you know the truth about why your mother and I aren't getting married. I know you're being cruel and vindictive. Maya, your mother has been lying to you, to all of us, for months. So you decided to humiliate her publicly? I decided to stop protecting her from the consequences of her choices. She's my mother, and she's the woman who is planning to marry me while having an affair with another man. Both things can be true. Maya hung up without saying goodbye. I wasn't surprised. Elena had always been the fun parent, the one who took Maya shopping and supported her dreams of changing the world. I was just the guy who enforced curfews and worried about college tuition. But Maya was 20 years old now, old enough to understand that the world was more complicated than she'd been taught. She'd figure it out eventually. Or she wouldn't, and I'd lose a daughter along with a fiancé. Either way, I was done pretending that protecting other people's feelings was more important than protecting myself. The house felt peaceful that night, quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. I made dinner for one, watched whatever I wanted on television, and went to bed without having to negotiate or compromise or pretend to be interested in someone else's day. For the first time since the engagement party, I slept through the night without waking up angry. Elena's counterattack came through Maya's social media accounts. I discovered this when old Pete, my most reliable employee, showed up to work with a concerned expression and his phone in his hand. "Boss, you might want to see this," he said, holding up the screen. Maya had posted a long, emotional rant on every platform she could find, painting me as a controlling, vindictive man who couldn't handle his fiancée's success. According to her version of events, I'd manipulated Elena into drinking too much at the engagement party, then used her momentary lapse in judgment to justify destroying her life. The post had been shared dozens of times already, with comments ranging from supportive to vicious. Several people I'd considered friends had liked it. Elena's fingerprints were all over the language. Too sophisticated for Maya, too calculated for genuine emotion. Kids these days, Pete muttered. No respect for their elders. It's fine, Pete. Let people think what they want. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. In a town this size, reputation mattered. The scrap metal business depended on relationships built over years, and those relationships could evaporate overnight if enough people decided you were the villain. I spent the morning calling customers, making sure they knew the real story before Maya's version became the accepted truth. Most were understanding. Divorce and relationship drama were nothing new in a place where everyone knew everyone else's business, but a few seemed cooler than usual, more formal. Around lunch, I drove to Elena's new apartment. She'd rented a place downtown, one of those modern units with floor-to-ceiling windows and rent that probably cost more than my mortgage. Her car was in the parking garage, so I knew she was home. She answered the door in yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt, looking like she'd been crying recently. The sophisticated lawyer persona had been replaced by something smaller and more vulnerable. "David, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk about Maya's social media campaign." Elena's face flushed slightly. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. The post about me being controlling and vindictive, the one that sounds exactly like something you'd write for a closing argument?" She stepped aside reluctantly, letting me into the apartment. It was sparsely furnished, a couch, a coffee table, a television mounted on the wall. Boxes were still stacked in the corners, like she hadn't decided whether this was temporary or permanent. "Maya's upset," Elena said. "She has a right to express her feelings." "She has a right to express her own feelings, not yours. That post was your words coming out of her mouth." "You're paranoid." "Am I?" "Because it's interesting how Maya suddenly knows details about our relationship that I never told her. Details that only you would know." Elena sat on the couch, pulling her knees up to her chest. "You're destroying my reputation, David. My career. My relationships with my family. Maya's just trying to defend me." "Your reputation destroyed itself the moment you decided to have an affair. I'm just making sure people know the truth instead of whatever story you're spinning." "The truth?" Elena's voice rose slightly. "The truth is that we've been growing apart for years. The truth is that you stopped trying to make me happy a long time ago. The truth is that Trent makes me feel alive in a way you haven't in ages. Then why didn't you just leave? Why the engagement, the party, the whole charade?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "Because leaving would have meant admitting failure, and I don't fail at things." There it was. The real truth, finally. Elena couldn't bear the thought of being seen as someone whose relationship didn't work out, so she decided to have it both ways. The security of our life together and the excitement of something new. "Well, congratulations," I said. "Now you get to fail publicly instead of privately. You're enjoying this. I'm surviving this. There's a difference." I stood to leave, but Elena's voice stopped me at the door. "David, wait. What if we could find a way to work this out? Quietly, without all the drama." I turned back to her. "What exactly are you proposing?" "We call off the engagement officially. Mutual decision, no fault, just two people who realized they wanted different things. I'll talk to Maya, get her to take down the posts. We divide our assets fairly and go our separate ways." "And Trent?" Elena looked away. "That's over. It was a mistake, a midlife crisis, or whatever you want to call it. He's not worth losing everything for." "Interesting. What changed your mind about him?" "Someone vandalized his car. Keyed it, flattened the tires. He's convinced it was you, and he's been calling me nonstop, demanding I make you stop." I kept my expression neutral. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I'd talk to you." "Consider this the conversation. I didn't vandalize his car." "David, Elena, I didn't vandalize his car. I have no idea who did that." It was technically true. I hadn't vandalized it. I'd deflated the tires and keyed one word into the paint. Completely different thing. He doesn't believe that. Then he should call the police and file a report. I'm sure they'll investigate thoroughly. Elena studied my face, looking for some sign of guilt or admission. She wouldn't find it. 23 years of marriage had taught me how to keep my thoughts to myself when necessary. "So, what's your answer?" she asked finally. "Can we end this quietly?" The engagement is already over, Elena. You ended it at the party. As for the rest, I shrugged. Actions have consequences. You chose to have an affair, you chose to humiliate me publicly, and you chose to use our daughter as a weapon against me. Those choices have results. What do you want from me? I want you to leave me alone. Stop calling, stop texting, stop having Maya post things online, find somewhere else to live your life, and let me live mine. And if I do that, you'll stop whatever it is you're doing? I'll stop responding to attacks. But Elena, if you keep coming after me, through Maya, through social media, through whatever other schemes you cook up, I'll keep defending myself. And I've gotten pretty good at it lately. I left her sitting on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The elevator ride down felt like descending from a great height, leaving behind something that had once seemed important, but now just looked tiny from a distance. That evening, Maya's posts disappeared from social media. All of them, as if they'd never existed. She called an hour later, her voice tight with embarrassment. Mom said I should apologize. Your mother was right. I was angry and hurt, and I wanted people to know that you weren't perfect either. Maya, I never claimed to be perfect, but there's a difference between being imperfect and being dishonest. I know that now. Mom told me about Trent, about the affair. I'm sorry you had to find out that way. Are you really not going to try to work things out? Some things can't be worked out, sweetheart. Some things just have to end. Maya was quiet for a moment. I love you both, you know. It's hard. I know it is. And I love you too. That's never going to change, no matter what happens between your mother and me. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen with a glass of whiskey, feeling like I'd won a battle I'd never wanted to fight. Elena had backed down, at least for now. Maya had apologized. Trent was dealing with his own problems, but I had a feeling this was just the end of round one. Frankie's gym occupied the basement of an old brick building downtown, the kind of place that smelled like sweat and determination and refused to acknowledge that the world had moved on without it. I'd been going there 3 times a week for the past 5 years, partly for exercise and partly because Frankie Romano was the only person I knew who gave advice without asking for the whole story first. You look like hell, Frankie said when I walked in that Thursday evening. He was wrapping his hands, getting ready for his own workout despite being 67 years old and having no business climbing into a boxing ring. Feel worse than I look. The engagement thing? Among other things. Frankie nodded toward the heavy bag in the corner. Glove up. Tell me while you hit something. I'd been coming here long enough that my hands wrapped themselves automatically, muscle memory taking over while my brain tried to organize the chaos of the past week. The heavy bag absorbed the first few punches without complaint. Elena's been having an affair, I said between combinations. 3 months? Maybe longer. I figured something like that. You figured? Dave, you've been wound tighter than a spring for months. Either she was cheating or you were, and you're too stupid to cheat. I hit the bag harder than necessary. Thanks for the vote of confidence. It's not an insult. Smart guys cheat all the time, but they do it because they think they can get away with it. Stupid guys cheat because they don't think at all. You think too much to be stupid, and you're too honest to be smart about it. So Frankie had a way of making sense that didn't make sense until later. I kept hitting the bag, letting the rhythm settle my thoughts. So what are you going to do about it? He asked. What can I do? It's over. She made her choice. That's not what I meant. I stopped punching and looked at him. Frankie was studying me with the expression he used when he was trying to decide whether a fighter had what it took to go another round. She humiliated you, he said, in front of the whole town. That's not something you just walk away from. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that sometimes people need to understand the consequences of their actions, and sometimes those consequences need to be educational. Frankie, I'm not going to do anything illegal. Who said anything about illegal? I'm talking about justice, the kind that happens when people realize they can't treat others like garbage without paying a price. I unwrapped my hands, thinking about what he'd said. Elena had humiliated me, yes, but she'd also underestimated me. She thought I'd just accept whatever story she wanted to tell, fade quietly into the background while she rebuilt her life with someone more exciting. What did you have in mind? Frankie smiled, and for a moment I could see the young fighter he'd been 40 years ago, back when he was winning more fights than he lost. Tell me about this guy she's been seeing. What's his weakness? His ego, probably. He drives expensive cars, wears expensive clothes, acts like he owns the world. Guys like that, their whole identity is wrapped up in how other people see them. Take away the image, you take away the man. And Elena. Elena's a lawyer, right? Smart, ambitious, probably thinks she's the smartest person in any room she walks into. Usually, yes. Smart people hate looking stupid, hate it more than anything else in the world. They'd rather be called evil than be called dumb. I was beginning to see where this was going. You think I should make them look stupid? I think you should let them make themselves look stupid. Smart people always outsmart themselves eventually. You just have to give them enough rope. We talked for another hour, Frankie's ideas growing more elaborate and devious as the conversation continued. By the time I left the gym, I had the outline of a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both. The next morning, I called Elena's office and asked to speak with her boss, Martin Hendricks. I'd met him a few times at office parties and bar association events, a serious man who took the law and professional ethics very seriously. Martin, this is David Patterson, Elena's fiancé. Former fiancé, actually. David, yes. I heard about the engagement party. I'm sorry things didn't work out. That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to give you a heads up about something that might become an issue for the firm. Oh? Elena's been having a relationship with one of her clients, Trent Morrison, from the luxury car dealership. I thought you should know, in case it creates any ethical complications. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. That's a serious allegation, David. I'm not making allegations, I'm just sharing information. What you do with it is up to you. Do you have any evidence of this relationship? I have hotel receipts, text messages, emails. I'm not looking to cause trouble for Elena, but I thought the firm should be aware of the situation. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We'll handle it internally. Of course, I just wanted to make sure everyone had all the facts. After I hung up, I felt a moment of doubt. Was I going too far? Was this the kind of vindictive behavior Maya had accused me of? Then I remembered Elena's voice at the engagement party, announcing to everyone that she'd only said yes because the ring was pretty. I remembered the text messages I'd found, the months of lies, the way she'd tried to use our daughter against me. Some people needed to learn that actions had consequences. My phone rang an hour later. Elena, predictably. What did you do? Good morning, Elena. How are you today? Martin just called me into his office. He's asking questions about my relationship with Trent, about whether I've violated any ethical guidelines. That sounds serious. David, did you call my boss? I called Martin to give him information he might need to protect the firm. Seemed like the responsible thing to do. You're trying to get me fired. I'm trying to make sure everyone understands the situation. If that creates problems for you professionally, maybe you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with a client. Elena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more calculating. You want to play games, David? Fine. We'll play games. But remember, I'm a lawyer. I know how to fight dirty. Elena, I'm not fighting with you. I'm just cleaning up the mess you made. We'll see about that. She hung up, leaving me with the distinct impression that I'd just escalated a conflict I wasn't sure I was prepared for. But it was too late to back down now. Elena had drawn first, and I'd responded in kind. The question was what she'd do next. I didn't have to wait long to find out. Elena's counterattack came in the form of a dinner invitation from her parents. Patricia called on Friday afternoon, her voice artificially cheerful in the way that meant she was planning something unpleasant. David, honey, we'd love to have you over for dinner Sunday night. Just family. You, Elena, Maya, and us. We think it's important to talk through this situation like adults. I appreciate the invitation, Patricia, but I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, David, for Maya's sake, if nothing else. This whole thing is tearing her apart. The guilt trip was expertly applied. Patricia had been using Maya as leverage for years, and she knew I had trouble saying no when my daughter's well-being was supposedly at stake. Will Trent be there? Of course not. This is family only. Fine. What time? 6 o'clock. And David, please try to come with an open mind. I hung up, knowing I was walking into an ambush, but curious to see what Elena had planned. Frankie's advice echoed in my head. Smart people always outsmart themselves eventually. Sunday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything seem sharper, more defined. The Morrison house, Elena's childhood home, sat in the older part of town where the trees were tall and the lawns were perfect. I'd always felt slightly out of place there, like I was wearing the wrong clothes to a party I hadn't been properly invited to. Maya answered the door, looking uncomfortable in the way that suggested she knew more about tonight's agenda than she was letting on. Hi, Dad. Hey, sweetheart. How are you holding up? I'm okay. Mom's, well, she's trying. Elena appeared in the hallway behind Maya, wearing a blue dress that I recognized from happier occasions. She looked nervous, which was unusual. Elena was rarely nervous about anything. "David, thank you for coming." Patricia was very persuasive. Dinner was Patricia's famous pot roast, served on the good china with conversation that carefully avoided anything important. Elena's father, Robert, asked about the business. Maya talked about her classes. Patricia shared neighborhood gossip. It was all very civilized and completely artificial. The real purpose of the evening became clear when Patricia brought out dessert, and Elena cleared her throat. "David, we asked you here because we care about you, about both of you, and we think this whole situation has gotten out of hand." "Which situation would that be?" "The vindictive behavior, the attempts to damage Elena's career, the refusal to even consider counseling or mediation." I looked around the table. Maya was staring at her plate. Robert was studying his coffee cup. Patricia wore the expression of someone who thought she was being helpful. "Elena, did you tell your parents about the affair?" "I told them we'd grown apart, that we'd both made mistakes." "Both of us?" "Relationships are complicated, David. It's rarely just one person's fault when things fall apart." "You're right. It's not one person's fault. It's your fault." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Patricia made a small noise of disapproval. "David," she said, "that kind of blame isn't helpful." "Isn't it? Because I've been sitting here listening to everyone talk about my vindictive behavior and my refusal to be reasonable, but nobody's mentioned the 3 months Elena spent having an affair with Trent Morrison at the Lakeside Motor Inn." Maya's head snapped up. "What?" Elena's face flushed red. "David, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, Maya, while she was supposedly working late or meeting with clients. She was meeting with a client, all right, just not in any professional capacity." "That's enough," Robert said quietly. "Is it? Because I came here thinking we were going to have an honest conversation about what happened. Instead, I'm being lectured about my behavior by people who apparently don't know what Elena's behavior has been." I stood up, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "Would you like to see the text messages, the hotel receipts, the photos?" "David, please," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please what? Please continue pretending that this is somehow my fault. Please keep protecting you from the consequences of your choices?" Maya was crying now, quiet tears that made her look younger than her 20 years. Patricia reached over to comfort her, shooting me a look that could have melted steel. "You're upsetting Maya," she said. "Maya's upset because her mother's been lying to her. To all of us. I'm just the one who stopped playing along." I put my phone away and looked at Elena. "You want to know what vindictive looks like? Vindictive would be sending those photos to Trent's wife. Vindictive would be posting them online for everyone to see. Vindictive would be making sure your affair became the most talked-about scandal this town has seen in years." "You wouldn't," Elena said. "I haven't, but that doesn't mean I won't, if you keep trying to make me the villain in your story." I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back to the table. "Maya, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but your mother made choices, and those choices have consequences. I'm not the bad guy for refusing to pretend otherwise." "Dad, wait." But I was already leaving, stepping out into the cool evening air and walking to my truck. Behind me, I could hear voices raised in argument. Patricia's sharp tone mixing with Elena's defensive responses. My phone rang before I'd driven 2 blocks. Frankie. "How'd it go?" "About like you'd expect." Elena tried to make it look like we were both equally responsible for the relationship ending. "In front of her parents?" "And Maya." Ouch. How'd that work out for her? "Let's just say everyone knows the truth now." Frankie chuckled. "Smart people, Dave, they always think they can control the narrative. Problem is, the truth has a way of coming out anyway." Elena looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "Good. Maybe now she'll understand that you're not going to be her scapegoat." When I got home, I poured a whiskey and sat on the front porch, watching the stars come out. The house felt peaceful again, the way it had been feeling more and more lately. Whatever happened next, at least Maya knew the truth now. Patricia and Robert knew the truth. Elena couldn't hide behind half-stories and mutual blame anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know." I texted back, "Nothing for you to apologize for. Love you." "Love you too." It was a start. The town's annual charity gala was Elena's idea of hell made manifest. 300 people in formal wear, pretending to care about causes they'd never heard of while gossiping about everyone who wasn't within earshot. Under normal circumstances, I would have avoided it like a root canal. This year, I bought a ticket. The event was held at the country club, in a ballroom that had been decorated to within an inch of its life. Elena was there, of course, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She'd brought Trent as her date, which took either tremendous courage or complete tone deafness. I arrived alone, wearing my best suit and the kind of smile that made people nervous without quite knowing why. "David!" Patricia Morrison appeared at my elbow within minutes of my arrival. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Wouldn't miss it. It's for charity, after all." She studied my face, looking for signs of whatever she thought I was planning. "I hope you're not here to cause trouble." "Patricia, I'm here to support the community, same as everyone else." Elena spotted me from across the room and said something to Trent, who turned to look in my direction. Even from a distance, I could see his jaw tighten. Apparently, he was still upset about his car. I spent the first hour mingling, making small talk with people I'd known for years. Most were polite but cautious. Word had gotten around about the engagement party disaster, and nobody wanted to be caught in the crossfire of whatever came next. The evening's program began with dinner, followed by speeches from various local dignitaries about the importance of giving back to the community. Elena was scheduled to speak about the legal aid clinic she supposedly volunteered for, a detail I happened to know was somewhat exaggerated. When they called her name, she walked to the podium with the confidence of someone who'd never met a room she couldn't work. She looked beautiful, composed, and completely in control. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying easily through the microphone. "The Legal Aid Clinic provides essential services to families who might otherwise go without representation." I waited until she was fully into her speech, then stood up and walked toward the exit. Not quickly, not dramatically, just a man who'd apparently remembered something important he needed to do. Elena's voice faltered slightly as she noticed my movement, but she recovered quickly and continued with her prepared remarks. I made it to the hallway outside the ballroom before stopping, counting to 30, then walking back in. This time, I walked directly to the front of the room, where a small table held programs and other materials related to the evening's events. I picked up a program, studied it intently for a moment, then walked back to my seat. Elena was talking about justice and equality, but her eyes kept tracking my movements. The third time I got up, this time to visit the bar, she stumbled over a word and had to start her sentence again. By the time she finished her speech, she looked rattled. The applause was polite but lukewarm, and she returned to her table, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. I waited until the dancing started, then approached their table. Trent saw me coming and stood up, puffing out his chest in a display that might have been intimidating if he weren't wearing a tuxedo that made him look like a penguin. "Patterson. Morrison, nice speech your girlfriend gave. Very inspiring." "Elena's not my girlfriend." "Oh? What would you call her then?" Trent's face reddened slightly. "We're friends." "Friends who spend Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at the Lakeside Motor Inn?" The color drained out of Trent's face. Elena, who'd been trying to pretend she couldn't hear our conversation, suddenly found it very important to study her wine glass. "I don't know what you're talking about," Trent said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Room 12. You pay for the week, but only use it twice. The desk clerk says you like the view, though I can't imagine what's scenic about a dumpster." "You're insane." "Am I?" "Elena, would you like to tell Trent about the photos you sent him? The ones where you're wearing that red lingerie set I bought you for your birthday?" Elena's wine glass hit the table harder than she'd intended. "David, stop!" "Stop what? I'm just making conversation with your friend." Other people at nearby tables were starting to notice our discussion. Voices were getting quieter, heads turning in our direction. The kind of attention that Elena normally craved, but definitely didn't want tonight. "You need to leave," Trent said, stepping closer to me. "Actually, I think you need to leave. See, this is a charity event for people who care about the community. People with integrity. People who don't steal other men's fiancés. I didn't steal anything. Elena made her own choice. You're right, she did. She chose to lie to me for 3 months while she figured out whether you were worth giving up her comfortable life for. Turns out you weren't, by the way. She told me the affair was over, that you weren't worth losing everything for." Trent's face went through several interesting color changes. "She said what?" Elena looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. "David, please." "Oh, she didn't tell you?" "Yeah, she came to see me last week. Said the whole thing was a mistake. Midlife crisis, she called it. Said you'd been calling her nonstop since someone vandalized your car, demanding that she make me stop." "Elena?" Trent turned to look at her, confusion and anger warring on his face. "It's not... I didn't..." Elena stammered, looking between the two of us like a tennis match she was losing. "The best part," I continued, "is that she actually thought I was the one who keyed your car. Gave me way too much credit for creativity. Liar was a nice touch, though, don't you think? Really captured the essence of your character." Trent took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists. "You son of a..." "Gentlemen, is there a problem here?" The voice belonged to Martin Hendricks, Elena's boss, who'd appeared at our table with the kind of expression that suggested he was not enjoying his evening. "No problem, Martin," I said cheerfully. "Just getting to know Elena's friend better." Martin looked at Elena, then at Trent, then back at me. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He was putting together pieces of a puzzle he'd apparently been working on since our phone conversation. "Elena, perhaps we should discuss your client relationships on Monday morning." Elena's face went white. "Martin, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. He walked away, leaving the three of us standing in an awkward triangle while half the ballroom pretended not to watch our drama unfold. "This is your fault," Trent said to me. "My fault? I'm not the one who decided to have an affair with a client. I'm not the one who brought that client to a public event as a date. I'm just the guy who got tired of pretending it wasn't happening." I looked at Elena, who was staring at the table like it might provide an escape route. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said. "Both of you." I walked away, leaving them to figure out how to salvage what was left of their dignity. Behind me, I could hear Trent's voice rising, Elena's attempts to calm him down, and the excited murmur of 300 people who'd just witnessed the most entertaining thing to happen at a charity gala in years. Outside, the night air felt clean and cool. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, watching people through the ballroom windows. Elena and Trent were having what looked like a heated argument. Patricia Morrison was gesturing frantically at someone I couldn't see. Maya was nowhere to be found, which was probably for the best. My phone buzzed with a text from Frankie. "How'd it go?" "Better than expected," I typed back. "Details tomorrow?" "Definitely." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. Elena had wanted to play games, to control the narrative, to make me the villain in her story of personal growth and self-discovery. Instead, she just learned what happened when you underestimated someone you thought you knew. The call came at 6 in the morning, 2 days after the charity gala disaster. Elena's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "We need to talk. All of us. Today." "All of us?" "You, me, Trent, Jessica. We're going to settle this once and for all." I sat up in bed, instantly awake. "What exactly are we settling?" "Your campaign of harassment. Your attempts to destroy my career and my relationships. This whole vindictive crusade you've been on since the engagement party." "Elena, I haven't been on a crusade. I've been defending myself." "Meet us at the old mill at 8 tonight. We'll hash this out privately, away from everyone else." The old mill sat on the edge of town, abandoned for the past decade and slowly being reclaimed by nature. It was the kind of place teenagers went to drink beer and feel dangerous, not the kind of place adults met to resolve relationship disputes. Why there? Because it's private. Because we won't be interrupted. Because I'm tired of our personal business being the town's entertainment. Something in her tone made me suspicious. Elena was many things, but she wasn't usually one for dramatic gestures or clandestine meetings. This felt like something Jessica would suggest. Elena's best friend had always been fond of theatrical solutions to practical problems. "Fine, 8 o'clock. And David? Come alone. No recording devices, no witnesses, no games. Just the four of us, talking like adults." She hung up before I could respond, leaving me with the distinct impression that I was being set up for something unpleasant. I called Frankie. "They want to meet at the old mill tonight. Elena, Trent, Jessica, and me." "That's either really stupid or really smart," Frankie said. "Which one depends on what they're planning." "What do you think they're planning?" "Could be anything. Maybe they want to threaten you. Maybe they want to make some kind of deal. Maybe they just want to yell at you without an audience. Or maybe they want to do something that requires privacy. That occurred to me too. You want backup?" Elena specifically said to come alone. "Elena's not in charge of your personal safety, Dave. She lost that privilege when she started having an affair." We agreed that Frankie would follow me to the mill, but stay out of sight unless things went wrong. It felt like overkill, but the whole situation felt wrong in ways I couldn't quite articulate. The mill looked even more ominous at night, its broken windows and crumbling brick walls creating shadows that seemed to move in the moonlight. 3 cars were already in the parking lot: Elena's sedan, Trent's replacement Mercedes, and Jessica's little red convertible. I sat in my truck for a moment, studying the building. Light flickered in what used to be the main office, probably from candles or flashlights. The whole scene felt like something from a bad movie, the kind where the hero walks into an obvious trap because the plot requires it. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "We're on the 2nd floor, main staircase." I climbed out of the truck and walked toward the building, every instinct I had screaming that this was a mistake. The front door hung open, creaking slightly in the evening breeze. Inside, the air smelled of dust and decay, with an undertone of something else. Cigarettes, maybe, or marijuana. The staircase was solid enough, though it groaned under my weight. On the second floor, light spilled from a doorway at the end of the hall. I could hear voices, Elena's definitely, and Trent's deeper tones. Jessica's laugh, sharp and artificial. They were waiting in what had once been the Mills administrative office, sitting around a card table that looked like it had been salvaged from someone's garage sale. Elena had dressed for the occasion in jeans and a sweater, trying to look casual and approachable. Trent wore his usual expensive clothes, though they looked out of place in the abandoned building. Jessica had gone for dramatic effect. Black dress, red lipstick, the kind of outfit that suggested she thought this was some kind of performance. "David, thank you for coming," Elena said, gesturing to an empty folding chair across from her. "Let's get this over with. What do you want?" "We want you to stop," Trent said. "The harassment, the stalking, the attempts to destroy our reputations." "I haven't harassed anyone. I haven't stalked anyone, and your reputations destroyed themselves." "You called Elena's boss," Jessica said. "You've been spreading rumors around town. You vandalized Trent's car." I gave Martin Hendricks information he needed to know about potential ethical violations at his firm. I've been telling people the truth when they ask about my relationship with Elena, and I've never vandalized anyone's car. "Then who did?" Trent demanded. "How would I know? Maybe you have other enemies. Maybe someone else figured out what kind of person you are." Elena leaned forward, trying to project sincerity. "David, we know you're hurt. We know you're angry. But this has to stop before someone gets seriously hurt." "Someone already got seriously hurt, Elena. Me. When I found out my fiancé had been lying to me for months." "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she said quietly. "How was it supposed to happen? Were you planning to tell me eventually, or were you just going to keep living two lives indefinitely?" Elena looked at Jessica, some kind of silent communication passing between them. Jessica nodded slightly, then stood up and walked to the window. "The thing is, David," Jessica said, not turning around, "Elena wasn't the only one living two lives." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means we know about your little investigation. The photos you took at the motel, the way you've been following Elena and Trent around town, the credit checks you ran on Trent's business." I hadn't run any credit checks on Trent's business, but I kept that to myself. "So? So stalking is illegal. Harassment is illegal. What you've been doing could land you in serious trouble." Jessica turned around, and I saw something in her expression that made my stomach clench. This wasn't just about Elena's affair anymore. This was about something else entirely. "What do you want?" I asked. "We want you to disappear," Trent said. "Leave town, start over somewhere else. Stop making our lives miserable." "And if I don't?" "Then we go to the police with evidence of your stalking and harassment. We file restraining orders. We make your life so complicated that you'll wish you'd taken our offer." I looked at the three of them, sitting there like they were offering me a generous settlement instead of trying to blackmail me into exile. Elena wouldn't meet my eyes. Trent looked smug, like he thought he'd finally gained the upper hand. Jessica looked calculating, like she was already planning her next move. "You're serious." "Completely serious," Jessica said. "And whose idea was this? Elena's? Trent's? Or yours, Jessica? Does it matter?" "It matters to me. See, Elena's not usually this vindictive. Selfish, yes. Dishonest, obviously, but not vindictive. Trent's too stupid to come up with something this elaborate. Which leaves you." Jessica smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it looked genuine. "Elena always said you were smarter than you looked." "Why?" "Why what?" "Why do you care so much about Elena's love life? Why go to all this trouble to protect her affair?" "Because Elena deserves better than a small-town scrap dealer who never had any ambition beyond making enough money to buy a bigger truck." There it was. The real reason, finally. Jessica had never thought I was good enough for Elena, had spent years waiting for her to realize it too. The affair with Trent wasn't just about Elena's midlife crisis, it was about Jessica's long-term campaign to upgrade her best friend's life. "So you encouraged the affair." "I encouraged Elena to pursue happiness instead of settling for mediocrity. And when that backfired, you decided to get rid of me entirely." "I decided to give you a chance to leave with some dignity intact." I stood up, looking at each of them in turn. Elena still wouldn't meet my eyes. Trent was checking his phone, apparently bored with the conversation. Jessica watched me with the expression of someone who thought she'd already won. "Here's my counteroffer," I said. "You leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. You stop trying to make me the villain in your story. I'll stop telling people the truth about what really happened." "That's not good enough," Jessica said. "Then we have a problem." I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Jessica, next time you want to threaten someone, you might want to make sure you actually have evidence of wrongdoing. I never stalked anyone, I never harassed anyone, and I certainly never ran credit checks on Trent's business. You just told me you made that up. Jessica's confident expression faltered slightly. Elena, I'm sorry our relationship ended this way. I really am. But I'm not disappearing just because your friend thinks I'm not good enough for you. David, wait. Elena started, but I was already leaving. Outside, the night air felt clean and cold. I sat in my truck for a moment, processing what had just happened. Jessica had orchestrated the whole thing, from encouraging Elena's affair to tonight's attempted blackmail. Elena had gone along with it, either out of guilt or weakness or some combination of both. My phone buzzed with a text from Frankie. Everything okay? Fine. Meet me at the diner. I'll buy you coffee and tell you a story. On my way. As I drove away from the mill, I could see lights still flickering in the second-floor window. They were probably trying to figure out what to do next, now that their plan had fallen apart. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. 6 months later, I was drinking coffee at Murphy's Diner when Maya slid into the booth across from me. She looked older somehow, like the past half-year had taught her things she hadn't wanted to learn. Hi, Dad. Hey, sweetheart. How are classes? Good. Hard, but good. She fidgeted with her coffee cup, not quite meeting my eyes. I wanted to talk to you about something. Okay. About Mom and Jessica and what really happened. I set down my coffee and studied my daughter's face. What about it? Jessica's been bragging about how she engineered the whole thing, how she convinced Mom to have the affair, how she set up the meetings with Trent, how she planned that confrontation at the mill. Bragging to who? Anyone who'll listen. She's been telling people she's some kind of mastermind, that she orchestrated Mom's liberation from her boring life. Maya's voice was tight with anger, an emotion I rarely heard from her. She's been saying that you were holding Mom back, that Mom needed someone to show her what she was missing. And what does your mother think about Jessica sharing all these details? Mom's furious. She says Jessica's making her look like a puppet, like she couldn't make her own decisions. They had a huge fight about it last week. I wasn't surprised. Elena had always been proud of her independence, her ability to control her own destiny. Learning that her best friend was taking credit for her choices would be humiliating. How are you handling all this? Maya was quiet for a long moment. I'm angry. At all of them. At Mom for lying, at Jessica for manipulating everyone, at Trent for being such a coward. What do you mean about Trent? He dumped Mom the day after that charity gala thing, said he wasn't interested in being anyone's midlife crisis. Mom was devastated. So Elena had lost both her fiancé and her lover in the span of a few days. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. I'm sorry, Maya. I know this has been hard on you. The thing is, Dad, I understand now why you did what you did, why you fought back instead of just letting them walk all over you. I never wanted you to be caught in the middle of this. I wasn't caught in the middle. I chose a side without knowing all the facts. That's on me. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the other diners and listening to the familiar sounds of small-town life continuing around us. So, what happens now? Maya asked eventually. Now? Now we move forward. You finish school. I keep running my business. Your mother figures out what she wants to do with her life. And Jessica? Jessica's not my problem anymore. Maya smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. Good, because she's definitely Mom's problem now. As we prepared to leave, Maya hesitated at the door. Dad, I'm proud of you, for standing up for yourself, for not letting them make you disappear. Thanks, sweetheart. That means a lot. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm on my face. The town looked the same as always. Familiar streets, familiar faces, familiar rhythms of life that continued regardless of individual drama. My phone buzzed with a text from Frankie. Gym tonight? Wouldn't miss it, I typed back. Some things I'd learned were worth fighting for. Self-respect was one of them. The truth was another. And sometimes, if you were lucky, fighting for those things led to something better than what you'd lost. I climbed into my truck and drove home, leaving the past where it belonged and focusing on whatever came next. It felt like freedom.